And since it was just $5,
Yeah. Why don't you
we made
share
that
that
we
draft
made that
thing?
decision.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
I'm recording it, folks, so I will post this so you can see the recording. And looks like this is our draft uh, deal here.
so it was
Okay.
very interesting,
Oh,
Professor,
okay.
because luck of the draw.
I had pick one. You had
Yep.
pick 12. Right.
Yeah, how cool is that? That
Isn't
we're
that
at
neat?
the
The
bookends.
extremes,
We're at the extremes because
both
one of the
turns, both
purposes,
terms. Yeah,
both
both turns.
both
Yeah.
turns, one of the purposes of doing a test case
Mhm.
is to have some differences so you can show the different strategies that might be employed. So you had the easy one because I
Yeah.
have said, Professor,
Yeah.
I have said that it's fantasy football malpractice this year to pick anybody but CMC with the first pick. He is the RB1. I don't care that he's another year older.
Yeah.
He was RB1 by such a spread over the competition. When I look at my three metrics at running back, he's got a difference of 90 points out of 300.
And mine was 20% better than the next, Dennis.
Yeah,
My
so he's
calm, we're talking
yep,
80 something versus 60 something, 20% in your pocket for last year.
30% difference using the combination of my three metrics. That's how far ahead he is of the RB1s. Now, if you want to say, hey, I don't believe that an RB1 is going to repeat because it has not happened for many, many years, and it's only happened 3 times in the last 30 years. And you're going to say, hey, I just not going to go with that chalk. I want to go and lead with a wide receiver. More power to you. If you have more faith in CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and you want to take one of those five guys as the first pick in the draft, I'm not going to scold you about it, but if you take any running back other than CMC first, you're 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 going against the odds. And it's never a good idea with the first pick of the draft to go that far against the odds. So, Professor, you had the first pick, you made the obvious pick. And did
Yep.
you even think twice about it?
Oh, no. Uh-uh. Nope. Nope. Nope.
So
Nope.
the interesting pick of the first round was my pick because there were 5 running backs off the board already, and there were
So you could have took
6.
Taylor there
I could have taken Taylor. I
or
could have
Kyrie
taken
Williams, Henry.
Derrick Henry. I could have taken
It wouldn't
Devon
have
A.
surprised
Shane.
me. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. In other words, if you'd done that, I'd be like, okay. If you're going to do your tight end, though, it is clear what you were thinking. Uh, I haven't had that kind of build so far. My tests have been skewed to the quarterback early, and you can see that I continue that journey.
So
Yes.
here is my theory, because I've done my homework.
Okay.
I'd had a few previous drafts. Mahomes was always available start of the 4th round in every draft that I've done this year.
Yeah.
So I looked at the opportunity here to start a stack. And so what I looked at is I said, okay, I got a shot here at a pretty good stack. So I led the draft with A.J. Brown. I really like A.J. Brown. He's kind of that target guy. He's a good touchdown guy. This is best ball. Every once in a while, he has a bad game. And when he has a bad game, he has a real bad game. But that doesn't matter in best ball. All that matters is the upside of every single player you take. And there aren't many other wide receivers that I would have taken there. Garrett Wilson was on the board. He has to increase his production 40 to 50% on a weekly basis to equal A.J. Brown this year. Marvin Harrison was on the board. Rookie. Yep. That's way too early, even for the best rookie that's come along at wide receiver in a while. I'll let those odds play against me here at 12th pick. That's way too early. Drake London would have been another guy that I looked at. But again, he needed a 40% increase this year to equal A.J. Brown. I think both Wilson and London, under ideal circumstances, could come close to that, but that's a big reach. I think they'll both be around 30%, 20%. So that drops them down a few rounds for me. Chris Olave is another guy that I considered at that pick. But again, he's got to pick up 20 to 30% to close in on Brown. So Brown was the easy pick. And because I got the wide receiver stud that I was looking for in the early rounds, I now can get a little more aggressive at other positions. I said, okay, I'm going to take a shot at getting my Kelsey Mahomes stack for the fantasy football playoffs, hoping that they don't rest in about week 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And I got the start of my stack with Travis Kelsey, taking him way too early, but I knew he would be gone by the time the third round came around. My other decision was to go running back. I was thinking Shane, Henry, or Taylor. Those were the three that I was going to take, and I knew I wouldn't get any of them. But looking at my data told me that there were a lot of very highly valued running backs that were going as late as the 6th round and farther back. So I'm pretty happy with sitting back and waiting at running back, whether I get one in the 3rd or maybe I go wide receiver in the 3rd and wait on those running backs. Because again, Professor, this is best ball.
Yep.
So I can sit back and just take a whole bunch of running backs instead of worrying about elite guys. And I was pretty confident that some guys that I really value more than the consensus, more than the ADP, would be available to me. So that's kind of how I played my first 2 rounds. And I was pretty happy, even though I admit way too aggressive going Kelsey. There was a hope that I could stack. And I do like to have some stacks. I will not go out of my way too far to get a stack. But if you're going to get a stack, Kelsey and Mahomes, one of the best you can get. So, Professor, take us through your decision.
So again, I think by August, I probably will not be taking Josh Allen at the turn. But for my beta test, I wanted to. So I was kind of locked in to taking him or Hurts. And I wasn't sure how that was going to play. I can anticipate me taking 2 wide receivers there come August. But right now, I went Josh Allen, just make sure I got one of the top, because I figured if I didn't take a quarterback there, I didn't think that I would be able to get like a Mahomes or Stroud. I probably could have got Stroud, but for my beta testing, that's the only reason I shoehorned in that pick. Pittman, love him, glad I would have taken Pittman regardless of what I was trying to do. So in retrospect, I would have loved Olave and Pittman, come August, I doubt you'll be able to pull that off. But Pittman was fine. I probably would have taken Adams or Evans. I probably would have doubled up with 2 wide receivers, but I didn't. And I was very glad for Pittman. I guess he had a pretty good comm data for last year. And of the choices, you could argue Adams, just a little bit concerned about Adams. Evans probably would be my pick over Adams if I would have done that. But that's just right now, this is June thinking, not August thinking. So that's why I did what I did.
And that's very smart move. Pittman, the 12th wide receiver off the board, and the last of the big, heavy target guys that is consistently getting 7 targets or more in a game. Devontae Adams does. Evans kind of goes hot and cold some games as far as those targets. Always a good producer, though. But I like that strategy. I think Pittman at that spot in the draft was a really good value. Now, I had a long time. This is the only problem about being on the turn is I had a long time to wait to get back. And I was already thinking I'm going to go another wide receiver here.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised that in that 3rd round, after you took Pittman, that there were 6 more wide receivers taken.
Yeah, it was a little run there.
Oh, there was a nice run. And look how few running backs went. I was hoping, here's how I do it, professors. When I finish my pick in the previous round, I look at logical guys that will be there, okay, at my next pick. Jonathan Taylor, I knew was going to be gone. Henry, I knew was going to be gone. Shane, I knew was going to be gone. Didn't care about tight ends because I'm not going to double up with 2 elite tight ends in this kind of a build. Knew Garrett Wilson would be gone. Didn't want him anyway. Knew London would be gone. Didn't want him anyway. Was pretty confident that Olave would be gone and the Pittman would be gone and that Adams would be gone and Evans would be gone. I thought I had a shot at either Nico Collins, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. All 3 of them went off the board in consecutive picks darn near, with Jalen Waddle in there as well before I got to my pick at 312. With so few running backs taken, I was left with the decision, do I want Mixon? Do I want Jacobs? Do I want Kamara? Those were the only 3 running backs I was considering. On the wide receiver side, I was considering DK Metcalf or Cooper Kupp. Those are the only 2, maybe Devonta Smith. So 2.5, because I was kind of, Smith is another guy that I'd potentially take there at 312, believe it or not. He didn't go until 5-4 in this draft. But that's the logic that I had when I took Kelsey at 2. Who's coming back to me? And Mixon, Jacobs, Kamara, Metcalf, and Kupp were the only players that were still on the board when it was time to draft. I was hoping Deebo, and I thought Deebo Samuel was going to be there. He would have been my pick. He went 1 pick before me. I love Joe Mixon in this spot. He's going to be with a very good Houston offense, with a quarterback that really isn't going to be running around a lot at the goal line. And he's a good, consistent player. So I grabbed him. Because I got Kelsey, I thought for a minute, okay, let's go Mixon. Let's go Metcalf here. That will give me Metcalf and A.J. Brown, 2 very strong wide receivers. I like that move. I'm pretty happy with that move. They have different bye weeks even, but I thought, you know what? The stack with Kelsey is available. And I thought I can maybe stack up a wide receiver with that duo later on in the draft. Let's give that a chance. And I will go with Patrick Mahomes. And I was happy. So I started my first 4 picks. Very rare for me to start with 4 different positions in a best ball draft. I usually have 2 of something by that point in the draft, but I was pretty happy with that pick. Long time back to you at 412 after picking Pittman. What was your process in
Well,
deciding which direction you were going to go?
I wanted to, it's a tight end premium. I wanted a tight end. I wanted to get greedy and pick up Kittle and Hawkinson. I had designs. I was thinking, he might slide right into my pocket. So that was kind of a greedy pick there, Kittle, but I wanted one. And I wanted another running back because I was kind of skewing towards trying to get 3 boss running backs. I had the one with CMC, and I said, well, I need some strong 2s. And I thought Sheed White would be a great 2 on a weekly, scoring basis there. So Kittle was picked so I could get greedy and think the saps in this league would leave me Hawkinson at the 8th, pick or so. And that, you see, that didn't happen, but that's what I'd hoped. I don't
That
know if
was
that's logical or not, but that's what I did.
No, that's a good solid move. And Rashad White is a guy that he was so inefficient, but he got his points because he did get volume last year.
That's
They
why he was a volume pick, Dennis.
Oh, all the way. And they did add Bucky Irving, which has me a little bit worried about White. But White's performances last year, Professor, if you just went on last year and you said, run it back, I'm not going to even, I don't even want anything better than last year. We're talking a running back that should be gone by early to mid third round.
Yeah.
If you just run it back. So getting him at the 5th round is pricing in the Bucky Irving potential.
Yeah.
And you have a chance much later in the draft
to get Bucky
Irving. So
yeah,
you can have the best of both worlds here because you're getting a guy RB15
yeah,
is pricing in all of the possibilities of seeing a drop in volume. I like it. I like that pick. If he dropped to me,
well, I didn't like Cook, Walker, or Aaron Jones over him.
Yes, I agree with you.
So it wasn't like, oh, he's the best I've been targeting. It was just what was coming up, and it looked thin to me compared to Cook, Walker, and Joe. I know Walker, there's some, some upside. Yeah, but I liked White over those 3.
And I think that's a solid move indeed. Well, I had a long wait.
It did, didn't you?
It does feel like a long wait because I'm in that situation after I take Mahomes. I got my stack, so I'm happy about that. But I got one of everything.
You do have one of everything.
I need a second of everything.
Notice I have one of everything.
And that's unusual for both of us to be in that situation.
Like I said, in August, I probably would have had RB, WR, WR, And it depends on what's going on with the tight end. I could even wait on Kittle and maybe try to grab Ferguson, Njoku, or somebody, you know. I'm just saying this was deliberately skewing for early June, not necessarily for what I'm doing in August. And I think you're probably the same way.
Yeah, absolutely the same way. And so I am set up in a situation where I need to be thinking wide receiver and running back. And
Yes.
I can either take two of them at the next turn, or I can take one of each,
Yeah.
depending on what's available.
Yep.
And I know that all of the sure bet WR1s on great passing teams are all going to be gone.
Yeah.
They're all going to be gone because most of them are already gone.
Yes.
So by the time I came around to my pick, I thought I'm going to have either the three wide receiver split guys like Tank Dell, for instance, or I was even thinking maybe Diggs falls. And I have a decision to make between Diggs and Dell. I know, Nico Collins is long gone by this point. So I'm thinking maybe I'm in a Diggs Dell decision mode between the two. I thought maybe T. Higgins falls to me at 512. I thought Pickens might be available. I thought Cooper might be available. And I thought Flowers would be available. Those are the only guys that I was looking at that I thought were fifth and sixth round turn viable players to take. Now, understand, I was looking to potentially build a 3-player stack, but I was under the belief when I'm picking at 512, yep, Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy are both available. So is Rashee Rice. You don't know what's going to happen with his suspension. So I knew that all three of those guys would be available as well. But Tank Dell, before he got injured, was on one heck of a run. And in fact, if you look at some of his data on a weekly basis, he was putting up points before he got hurt that were not that far behind Nakua. So Tank Dell is in a very interesting situation. While he's part of a 3-legged stool at wide receiver of 3 really good players in Nico Collins, Diggs, and Dell, his route tree is very different from Diggs and Collins. Diggs and Collins' route trees are rather similar. And I didn't have to worry about the Diggs-Dell decision because Diggs went earlier than I thought he would. Higgins was also off the board. Devonta Smith, the guy that I thought might drop, a guy that I considered picking at 4-1, was also gone. So my decision was with Dell, Pickens, and Zay Flowers. I thought maybe Amari Cooper, but I thought maybe Cooper falls one more round to the 7th. Maybe he doesn't fall quite to my pick at the 7th, but I thought, there'll be some other guys that will be available for my 7th round pick when I get there. So I needed a wide receiver. I went Tank Dell, figuring he's got the best upside. He's got the best potential to put up one of those 30-point plus weeks of the guys that's left on he's a big play guy. If he scores 2 big touchdowns for you in any given week, the guy's going to put up like 140 yards, 2 touchdowns on 6 catches. He's going to put up one of those monster games that you look at, you go, wow, okay, 30 points. That's going to win me a week. So I liked his upside potential. Now, notice early in the draft, I liked AJ Brown because of the high consistency. And I didn't mind that he had a couple of bad weeks every year because I knew that he'd be a good, consistent performer. I knew Mixon would be a good, consistent performer. So those guys, first 3 rounds, I'm going certainty. I'm going guys that are, the brand names that you can count on. I'm not going generic peanut butter here. With Tank Dell, it's all upside. He could get beat up again and miss games, but when he's out there, I think they're going to get him the ball at least 3 to 5 times on a bad week, and he can do some pretty crazy things with that ball. So here I liked total upside pick of Tank Dell. Now I did think about going wide receiver. That would give me 3 really strong wide receivers, and Pickens was the guy that I almost took. But I said, there's going to be guys. Maybe Cooper falls. Hollywood Brown's going to fall. I was wrong about that. I thought Xavier Worthy would fall to the 7th round, so I'd have a triple stack of Chiefs. I thought Chris Godwin would fall to me at that next pick. And I thought Keenan Allen and Terry McLaurin had a shot of falling to the 7th. So I said, nope, I'm going to take a running back here. Now of 2 really good upside performance guys at wide receiver and 2 really good running back upside guys, because I think DeAndre Swift is going to have a monster year with Chicago this year. Very exciting offense. If Caleb Williams is average to above average as a rookie, they're going to score a lot of more points than they did last year. DeAndre Swift is going to be the guy who's going to get it done. So that was my rationale behind taking Swift in the 6th round. Now, you had to wait a long time for your pick too, Professor.
Yeah.
Tell us what you were thinking at 6 and 7.
I'm still thinking about that Hawkinson pick is my number 2, still being greedy. But at this point coming in and James Conner was still there, I was rubbing my little feelers, my little greedy feelers, being very happy that I was going to pick him up. And Keenan Allen, the old warhorse, got the back class. We talked about it last year. My comm data, it's got the back class. Everything said pick Allen. And then James Conner was a gotta be greedy. And with Conner, then I had White and CMC, and Allen seemed to be a solid number 2 WR for me. So I felt like Pittman was a 1, 2. So you could argue it was a little weak there. I mean, you can't be super strong everywhere with 12, players, playing against 11 other. But to me, that was the balance, because I was hoping to get some nice late round wide receivers, etc., coming. But Connor I was dancing up and down, so happy. I was doing the happy, greedy dance. And Allen was just a logical old back class pick. And so I mean, that's kind of where I was at. Still looking for Hawkinson, thinking, let's roll that dice and maybe he'll fall my next turn.
And I love the Keenan Allen pick, because that was a guy that I expected to fall to me in the next round at the end of the 7th, but I wasn't thinking that you were in between me.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And Connor too. And I, we were all over, because if you didn't take Swift and Connor were there,
yeah,
I might have double dipped and took both those. I really, you took that decision out, because Montgomery, I wasn't, there was really nobody else that I was like, I need a doublet here of RBs. Nope. Once you took Swift off the board, then I knew I just hoped Connor would fall. So I was very pleased.
And only one running back went after Swift. So
Yeah.
you were set up. Getting
Oh
Connor,
man, I was so happy.
getting Connor at RB21, his upside
I
is
thought it
10th.
was pretty good.
Is 10th. Keenan Allen, when you look at my 3 statistical tools, he's the WR7 over the last 2 years. Now, that's not forecasting for 2024, but if he loses 20% value on
He's
a
a good
weekly
2.
basis,
He's a WR2.
he 20% drop for Keenan Allen still has him in the top 15, and you're getting him at 33. That's a God's gift to fantasy
Dennis, he
football.
has back class. He's a
He
back
has
class
back
pay.
class, and he's got the kind of route tree that ages well.
Yes.
He's gonna eat up those short passes. He's just
Yes,
gonna
he
eat up
will.
those short passes. They've got the big guys to go and to spread the field for him.
Yes.
And so lots of good opportunities there. Love that Keenan Allen pick. I'm actually pretty high on Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is going to have a heck of a year. I think he's going to have a lot of turnovers, but he's going to have a lot of passing yards. And Keenan Allen is that's a 1,000-yard receiver at 33. I know he's had injuries. I know he's old, but
he's got back class, Dennis.
He's got the back
class. He doesn't have to burn the field. That's not what they got him for.
No. So my wait until 7-12 was horrible because I'm thinking, guys, once Connor's off the board, I'm like, oh, I knew he was going to be gone. I'm thinking, maybe Najee Harris, who at that point, late in the 7th, would be a good pick. I was thinking maybe Mostert, then I double up with the running backs from Miami and maybe get the rookie right. I was thinking maybe Zamir White falls because nobody believes in that kid. But the guy that I really thought was going to fall to pick 7-12 that I was going to be all over. In fact, I would have taken him so fast, I wouldn't even have been on the draft clock for 3 seconds. Ramondre Stevenson was a guy who had some injuries, some inconsistent play on a horrible offense last year. Coaching change is going to do him a world of good. I thought, man,
if him and if I was in your shoes and him and Godwin were still there, I would have doubled down on both those guys and waited on your second quarterback. I really would have.
Slam dunk picks right there, but both of them gone.
Yeah, that was 7, unfortunate. Godwin, they're talking, stuff on the internet. They're talking about he's going to put him back in the slot. And, he did pretty good, had a nice consistency last year, given where he was at. And if he gets a change of venue as far as on the field, hey, I think he would have been a good pick there for you.
Yeah, so those guys all going right before I made my selection because I'm 3 picks out, and that's exactly who I had loaded. I had Stevenson, number 1, Godwin, number 2, Jaden Reed, number 3. 6 picks out. Those were the guys. And I'm thinking, I like this. I'm feeling pretty good. I pick in 6 picks. I gotta sit through 5 more picks. One of those 3 is going to be available, and maybe 2, none of them. 0 for 3, Professor.
That was rough.
So that was rough, but I love Jonathan Brooks this year. Yes, I understand Carolina had an awful offense last year. They were poorly coached. They just seemed to be all out of sorts. I don't understand what happened there with their coaching situation. Change of coach, change of everything, more offensive linemen. And he's only got to beat out Shuba Hubbard to
which
be
he
the
can do.
lead.
So,
Yeah.
so Dennis, in horse racing, we call that the ultimate change, right? You get gelded, you're going to the mud from the grass, and you're shortening it up or lengthening. I mean, lots of things are moving, and you never know. He could really surprise you. And I think Brooks is one of those kind of upside plays that at the seventh round there, since Stevenson is gone, I think that was a nice. I probably, if he was still available to me, I probably would have picked him instead of the tight end that I did.
Yeah. And that's exactly the thought process. Plus, he was the last running back that I really like. After
Yes.
that, I
Gets
see, oh,
lean.
it gets lean and it gets very unpredictable as far as who's going to get the volume. So in
Yes.
the Cleveland backs are still available, but you got Chubb, who's
You got
coming back from
Ford. You
injury.
don't,
You
yeah.
got
Who?
Ford. They brought in Foreman to compete with Ford early. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't like this at all. So Brooks was an automatic pick. So here I came to my dilemma at pick number 8 because all my running
That's
backs,
pretty bold for Burrow. I mean, he probably
all
wouldn't survived it to the next round. You either took him there or you probably wouldn't have got him.
no, and here's my rationale
Okay.
between taking Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I didn't like anything else. Okay. I didn't like any of the wide receivers that were available. Calvin Ridley, Christian Watson, injury issues. Hopkins, yes, but
I picked him up.
I thought he would fall another round to me.
No.
But again, who's sitting there to scoop him up?
Yeah.
So I did not draft thinking I was drafting against you, and that was the difference.
And I hadn't even paid attention. You said that, and I hadn't even gave it another thought because I got 10 going or 9 now, and
Yep.
I've actually forgot which one we were actually in together. Burrow's
So
okay. I mean, he's a
yeah,
great
so
two. He will be a nice two.
so here's the advantage to going Burrow with Mahomes. First of all, they get different bye weeks.
That helps.
Second of all, they're both spike week guys. So you're going to get
Yes.
those 4 touchdown games out of these guys. And because I can get him in the 8th round, I now don't have to worry about another quarterback. I can just punt the quarterback position the rest of the day. But the main reason is because Godwin and Reed were gone, because Stevenson was gone. Those are the 3 other players that I really valued. I didn't care about Jalen Warren. I didn't care about Javonte Williams. I didn't care about Pollard. Didn't care about Ford. All those guys are replaceable. I did consider Hawkinson with this pick at 8. And I thought, you know what? Do I need to go that route when I've got Kelsey already? Because Kelsey typically, in a usual season, he's going to account for your tight end position 10 or more weeks in best ball, no matter who you have as your second guy. He's good for 10 solid weeks a year if he stays healthy. So I looked at that and I said, I'm not going to take him here, and I'm going to solidify my quarterback situation. But also, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the last of the spike week guys who can have 3 or 4 touchdowns without blinking. I'm going to remove that guy from the 8th round. And that leaves the Brock Purdy's, the Staffords, and Goff as the only 3, and maybe Herbert. Although Herbert's going to be in a situation where they're probably going to be passing less. It may be Tua, but that's too early for Tua. I figured he would drop another round or 2. So grabbing Burrow, I solidify my quarterback position, and now I can just worry about other positions the rest of the way. So, Professor,
Yeah.
long wait again until you got back to 8-12.
So
What
I
was your
was
thought?
my 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 feelings got hurt with Hawkinson gone. And then I liked Schultz and I liked everybody I wanted of the tight end were gone. And Komet was the last horse out the barn. If it was on fire at that point as far as
Yes.
a tight end too. Okay. I don't, Hawkinson could be a one when he gets back. Okay. So that's why I was greedy. And, but I wouldn't have taken him in the seventh, it just the way it worked out. So my emotions may have gotten the best of me. Should have waited, but I didn't like any of the other tight ends as a two. There's about 3 threes that I like way deep, and I'll probably end up taking one of those 3. And I'm sure Dennis knows what 3. And I'll just, I like dosage way deep. I like, who's our Indianapolis guy that we like?
Jelani
Yeah,
Woods.
Woods, and I like Ertz is
Yep.
my 3. So I'm thinking one of those will be deep for me, and I'll be happy with my 3 tight ends. So to me, either took Cole or just okay. I'm gonna take Kittle, which is a poor man's 1, and then hope my 3s can balance. So I might have had to jump early on 2 of those 3 that I just mentioned. By taking Komet, I could relax a little bit later and get more speculation on some later picks. So that was there was some emotions there. Hopkins, another back class. I guess this is at this point in the mid draft, I'm taking these old war horses with back class. At that point, for my 3, I thought Hopkins was a good 3. I wasn't, you know, none of the other than Coleman with potential upside. Since I did have Allen, I did debate that. So my debate and Deontay Johnson, I did. Those were my 3 picks. I picked Hopkins for more of a consistency because I didn't know what I was getting with Coleman, and Johnson seemed a little bit riskier or uncertain. But those are the 3 I was thinking about at that spot. But Hopkins had that back class. I took him. I did consider Eckler as another old back class guy, but I already had 3. And by the way, if you look, Dennis, our first 7 rounds, we mirror each other on positional distribution. 1 quarterback, 3 RBs, 2
Wow.
WR. We changed at 8. You went QB, I went tight end. So we flipped the script, and I'm going to continue to flip. But right there, I think we're satisfied with that build. So that's why I took Hopkins.
Love the Hopkins pick. I was delusional enough to think that he might fall to the 9th. He was on my radar at 8. But I thought there were other guys that would fall that I'd be okay with. But when I saw Hopkins go off the board, just like when I saw Keenan Allen go off the board, I'm like, you got me. The back class on both of those guys
You
was
figure
too much.
one of them is going to deliver on a weekly basis because it is a weekly game. You hammer. I've still got nails in my head that if that weekly concept, you nailed it in my head 5-6 years ago, okay, at the fake pigskin, and it had left. If they x-rayed me, they'd find it. It would say weekly game, not end of season points. That is a sucker's play there. So you did good there. If nothing else I took from you, that has changed how I do my drafting is the weekly concept, and that led to all the metrics that I've been using, my weekly tools. And I don't know
Yeah,
who else is doing. I guess there's others that are doing secret stuff, but nobody's really. Have you noticed anything as far as weekly stuff that to me either wasn't, I know Bob Lung, he's Mr. He was
king of
may been there
consistency.
before us, right? I mean, look,
Yes.
we still, Mr. Lung, sorry. But other than that, it's I don't know. Like I said, maybe it's behind paywalls, but I hadn't seen any new metrics tries to investigate that. So
And while they do not use a metric, both Jim Coventry and Bob Harris,
what you, we're
two,
talking on the pantheon of
two,
gods there. There
two,
they are.
two
There
more,
they are.
two more of the OGs
Oh, definitely.
that have forgotten more about fantasy
Yeah.
football than most people will learn in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Those guys talk about games over a certain threshold of points. So they both talk weekly. And Jim Coventry and I have had some interesting back and forth discussions. He actually even said today that he loves my metrics that I use because they're based on his theories. Like, I'm not ashamed of saying that when I see guys tell me, well, this guy, when you're talking about a player, and Harris and Coventry will both say, this guy had 6 games over 15 points last year. When you are looking at the data like that, you're looking at weekly values. You understand that fantasy football is a weekly game. Or when you even grade out, and I don't think it's as good, but I hear Harris a lot of times talk about how many RB 1 to 12 games, starting RB games that this guy had. And that's very similar to the professor's number of looking at scoring, from top to bottom on a given week.
Yes.
Those are guys that are looking at stuff on a weekly basis. They understand it. Maybe they just haven't dug as deep of forming an actual statistical metric like we have, but they get it, Professor. And yeah, that back class, I love you going for that back class there as well. I was hoping, so when we left round 8, we got all the way down through the end of round 8, and I saw your turn and saw you grab Komet and Hopkins, which, by the way, I again like both of those picks because taking Kittle, you need to be a little earlier taking a second tight end
That's
than
yeah.
if
That's
you
it.
take
He's a poor
Kelsey,
man's one.
than if you take Kelsey or Andrews or Laporta or McBride.
Yes.
So he's the last of those really outstanding.
And notice the board is
Yes.
9 and 10. Nobody takes all the way to Conklin in the 11th, Dennis. So I think we're not the only one who thought about that. In fact,
No.
that little mini run right there is because people were like, uh-oh, I better grab something before it's too late.
And Freermuth is a guy that I love this year as well. And I was contemplating that he might fall to that
And
next
by the way,
round.
look at that guy. That guy has what? 6 RB,
Wide
no
receivers.
quarterback,
Yeah.
and 1 running back. I understand trying to and look, if that's a beta test, that's an interesting beta test. I've never skewed my draft that skewy. I would have a quarterback in there. I could understand 1 RB, but I'd have to have a quarterback in there somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I know this year that there are some quarterbacks that are dropping farther than I thought they would.
And that guy picks them up later too.
Yes, he
and
does.
Herbert, and that's that. Look, that probably satisfies. But his RB is getting lean at that point. Jacobs,
very
yeah,
lean.
and he picks up Eckler, and I'm thinking, whew, Boy, you talk about the ice is cracking for the RB position. I don't know how he's going to play the rest of the draft, but when somebody's skewy like that, you're really hoping I see Miller. Dennis, I don't think there's a lot of lifeboats left out there. I mean, as far as anything solid, he's going to be good.
No,
You know, I may have,
no.
yeah, that's an interesting, and I hadn't even, look, I hadn't, you and I just started talking. I hadn't even looked at the rest of the board, and I started looking around, and I'm like, wow, that's bold. I have no problem. $5, roll the dice, keep it in your draft diary. And by the way, I do probably about early, right before the expo. I think you and I need a show on draft diary, making sure all our P's and Q's are done and all our I's and T's crossed and dotted. So everybody goes in with their diary ready to roll for the pre-draft. So, because once the weekly hits, you get a little lazy on figuring out, and all of a sudden, folks, you'll look in about the 8th week, you're like, now, why did I pick, why was that? Why did I spend all my money in week 4 on this cat? If you don't write it down, it's going to be gone, for whatever reason. We'll talk about diary coming. And to me, that's very important. And I have 2 or 3 lesson plans that you're welcome to see at the Science of Fantasy. Anyway, let's get back to your stuff. I agree with the tight end, and it got lean. And if you look, Dennis, what? 9, 10, 11, 12, only one tight end taken. I believe the public has voted the last horses out the barn, and I got the last one, Komet.
Yeah, and I love that move because Komet was another guy that I was thinking would be my second tight end. So now he's gone, and I agree. There was not another tight end that I looked at and said he's a guy I gotta have.
Are you going to try to take 3 or 4?
I'll take 3 at least, and I got my 2 late guys.
Are you going to pick Gray? Gray, round 20 with
probably
Kelsey?
Not, because I'm worried that Wiley, the rookie, might be the actual backup
so he's
now.
the new Gray.
Might
Wiley's
be. So
the new Gray. Okay.
Which means because there's that uncertainty,
you can't pick either one.
I can't pick either one in best ball. So I've got a couple of guys in mind that I think will fall into the 13th through 15th round as we go revisit the bargain bin tight ends.
And I mentioned 3.
Yeah,
that you and I both kind of like. Woods, Dosage, and Ertz pretty late. There's a few others that I could speculate on.
And the other guy that I'm going to speculate on is Jonnu Smith. I really like his potential to be a productive tight end, maybe 4 weeks out of the year on that Miami team. So I'm going for that. They've not used the tight end a whole lot in the past.
Dennis, I just did my touch stuff, and I'm saying they disrespected Gesicki.
Oh
last year. Just want to let you know. He was disrespected.
No, they have not liked tight ends. And Hunter Henry in New England is another guy.
That's another good one.
Maybe with the change of offense that they'll go that way. But yeah, Miami, they disowned Gesicki and let him go to New England. New England disowned him and let him go to Cincinnati. And I still don't have any faith in Mike Gesicki. But I had to start thinking what I'm going to do at 9 and 10.
Yep.
And here were the guys that I thought might be available. I was under the belief that somebody was going to miss out and let Austin Eckler's back class fall. And if he fell, my pick was to wrap up the Washington backfield right there at 9 and 10.
Yep.
He didn't fall. I knew Gus Edwards would be gone by then.
The reason he didn't fall was the cat that got him had 6 WRs and was pretty much in panic mode.
I
And
thought he
look
would
at his
go.
pick.
I thought he
QB.
would. Yeah.
Look, but
I
look, he does QB, tight end, and RB because he stacked all his eggs in W. I mean, folks, I'm not saying that's not a bad strategy, but when you do that, it's like Dennis. It's like that cat woke up in round 8 and says, "Oh shit, I need some other positions here," and he just goes hog crazy.
and that's why I thought he was going to go quarterback in the next 2 picks. So I thought he would let Eckler go, figuring I'm just going to take a bunch of crazy running back picks later on. But he came to his senses and took the back class with Eckler. The other guy that I thought might be still available was Singletary. I don't like the Giants offense, but Singletary was there. I thought it was too early to
Look,
go.
they used Barkley a lot, so there
Yes.
is that void. And if they follow their philosophy, he's a good late round reach for a
And
3 or 4.
yeah, and Singletary beat out Damian Pierce. He had a much tougher competition last year with Houston, and he beat out Damian Pierce, who was coming off a solid year. So, albeit back from injury, but he was healthy, and Singletary beat him one-on-one. He's got less competition this year. So Singletary was a guy that I was considering as well at the 9th, 10th round push. I was also thinking that Keon Coleman, Deontay Johnson, and Brian Thomas would make it back to me. 2 of the 3 rookies, and then Deontay switching teams on a bad Carolina team, but somebody's got to get the targets. And then Jordan Addison was another guy that I thought might fall. And again, uncertainty at quarterback, definite WR2 to a stud, and still a guy that I might want to have on my team. But I got to that point and I was like, I am a big believer in Brian Robinson. I was a big believer in Brian Robinson last year. I was getting him this late in drafts, and he turned out to be a solid, RB 15-ish type of guy in weekly value. I can get that at 34, and I just have to worry about Eckler taking a little bit off the top. I'll take that chance. I like Brian Robinson because Eckler, yeah, he can score a lot of touchdowns, but on short yardage, when you're going to run at the goal line, Brian Robinson's going to be more the guy. Is Washington going to have a good team this year? I don't know. Does he lose some of those goal line touches to Eckler out of the backfield and also to Jaden Daniels running the ball in? Yes, he does.
Yes.
That devalues him from last year, but WR34, I'm going to take a chance on him as my 4th running back and be very, very pleased. I'm a big fan of Brian Thomas Jr. I think that he is uniquely positioned to be his team's leader in targets. He's got Christian Kirk. That's a pretty good ball player ahead of him, but a guy that's been injured at times and a guy who's just doesn't really have that sizzle as an alpha wide receiver. He's more the 2 guy. And he's already gone way early in the draft. So I look at Thomas as a rookie with a chance to take over as the top target guy at wide receiver by week 6 or 7 or 8 through the end of the year. That's a huge bargain. I don't need another running back because there's other than Singletary. My decision was Singletary or Brian Robinson in the 9th round. 10th round was pretty easy because the other 2 rookies the other rookie that I like, Keon Coleman, was gone. Xavier Worthy was long gone. So yes, I had an opportunity there to take a rookie with WR1 upside as the 46th wide receiver off the board. He's got everything priced in for him to be a huge bargain. And he was a pretty good guy to add as my third wide receiver. I needed wide receiver help, and that was the pick that I took. So a long way back to you at the 10-11 turn.
Yeah, so 10-11 turn. This is my beta test shoehorning in. I wanted quarterbacks, and I wanted Cousins at that point. I would have taken Caleb Williams, Goff, Herbert, hoping any one of those, because they seemed a little bit, Cousins with the injury, they were all gone, and I was extra sad. But I took Cousins. Then silly me, he has the same bye week as Allen, I think, and that made me mad. So I said, okay. So I took Mayfield back to back. That was probably the rim of my wheel on the car getting a little loose there, Dennis. But hey, it's early June, $5. I only would wanted one, and I didn't pay attention to the buy, and so I don't think I need any more quarterbacks. So it's all sniping from the hills. Since I'm from Arkansas, we hillbillies snipe from the hills if you get too close to the still. So that was why I did a quarterback, and the guy, the Mr. WR did it too. So, and in fact, if you start looking, that becomes a trend. There's like 2 or 3 other folks had done quarterback in this draft as well. So it's not as unusual as you think people are doing 2 quarterbacks at this stage. Just remember, and so now that I've seen this, and I probably should look at the draft board. You and I've gotten so much by just hearing what you're telling me that I'm now going to go look at the other one. But one of the things on my other picks, I'm curious how many times in the 9th, 10th, 11th are people taking QB. I really hadn't even thought about that as just something to remind me, like, this is possible. I just need to know that. And I'm curious in my other ones, Dennis, and you might check yours as well. I'm just that, everything's always a question. And that would be my question, is how unusual is it that 1, 2, 3, 4 of 12 are taking and then if you count the other guy, 5 of 12 in the 12th round. So 9th to 12th, 5, almost half the league is taking QB back to back. Have you noticed that before?
Yeah, and one other took him earlier. With Stroud and
yeah, but I'm
Prescott.
talking in this segment. That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah,
is this something that people are doing, or is this just something funky? Now I've got to check to answer that question.
I'm going to check too, because in many leagues, in many best ball leagues in the past, I have doubled up at quarterback.
Well, people are doing it.
And I have had a few that I can recall, Professor, where I waited on quarterback. 8, 9, and 10, all quarterbacks.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think actually looking at the board this year, 8th through 11th rounds, might be prime wait on a quarterback time, because I'm okay with, if I can grab 3 from the Burrow, Stafford, Purdy, Cousins, Herbert, Tua, maybe Watson as my third, Goff, Lawrence, Caleb Williams, give those guys to me. So I might have some leagues this year where I end up 8 through 10 taking my quarterbacks. And by doing that, I can wait at the other positions, and I might combine that, Professor,
Mhm.
with some leagues where I wait until 13th and forward, 13th through the end of the draft to take any tight ends
Mhm.
and take 4 late. I may experiment with that in a couple of
I'm
leagues.
curious about the 8th, 9th round tight ends and the QBs 9th to 12th. I'm curious, is that something going on?
And,
And yeah,
and so I think once we get done with our each of our 10 test leagues, we're going to have a lot of data.
yeah, I think we need to circle back around into June, Dennis, and you and I, just for next year's sake, just curiosity, you know.
Very interested in
Yep,
how that'll go. So
yep.
I had a long wait until I
You
got
sure
back to the
did.
11th, 12th turn. And here's the interesting
Yeah, I see
part.
somebody interesting, by the way. My little greedy feelers, you you know who I'm talking about. I wanted that Mike Williams in my pocket way, you weren't supposed to jump ahead, but you take a look, everybody was thinking WR in round 12. Lots of that happening.
Yes. Yes. And it got very interesting in
Yeah.
the 11th round there because guys that I was considering at running back,
Mhm.
Nick Chubb. I was
Yeah.
like, by the time it gets back to me at 11, if he's still there, he's a slam dunk pick.
Yeah, he's worth your gamble at that point.
That was the only running back that I really thought, other than the one I end up taking, was the only one that I thought maybe Jalen Wright if he falls, but he didn't. So those 2 running backs were gone. I thought for sure, I was so confident that Rashee Rice would be avoided like the plague and would come back to me at 11, and I'd have a triple stack
Triple
of
stack.
Mahomes, Kelsey, and Rice.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy with that, especially later in the season. Rice went 4 picks before me.
Yeah.
So
That's
by the
sad.
time I got to my 11th pick, I got one of my running backs that is another one of these guys that I really like this year. I'm not going to wait and be patient and get him as my second or third running back because I'm not that confident. But I think Chase Brown's going to win the job. I think Chase Brown's going to beat out Zach Moss in Cincinnati. Maybe not at the beginning of the season, but by week 5 or 6, I think there's more upside to Chase Brown's game. And Chase Brown is a guy that I watched because I watched a lot of Big Ten football and Illinois games. He was a very good blocking back for the Illini. And that was at a time that, Tommy DeVito was quarterbacking. And Chase Brown had some skills out of the backfield that I liked. He was a good, tough runner like that. He got hurt before the start of the season and the all pro in front of him. So there was no way he was going to win a lot of touches unless Mixon got hurt. But Chase Brown sort of worked his way into that backup role. And I think he's going to end up be better than Zach Moss in the long run. He's younger. The Zach Moss contract is built in such a way that there's an easy out after this year. So they're going to want to get Chase Brown some touches to see how good he is. And at the 12th round, it was a slam dunk, Professor, because Mike Williams,
Yeah.
getting Mike Williams at the 51st wide receiver off the board more than cooks in any of his injury concerns. That
Yep.
was a slam dunk pick for
Yep.
me.
Yeah, that was sad. My feelings were extra hurt after that pick. Uh,
And he's
yeah.
my 4th wide receiver, so I'm feeling pretty good about that at this point.
So I needed a wide receiver. And I started thinking it is time to start rolling the dice. Marshawn Lloyd was a strict dice roll. Dennis special. Dennis likes him, maybe not this early, but
Oh yeah,
uh,
that's a
uh,
good pick in 12.
yeah. And then to me, back class, Brandon Cooks, I have a consistency number with this round. He stood out as one of the better wide receivers left. I would have taken Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, of course, Jacoby Myers, but Cooks to me right in there. I would have taken, if two of those would have been there, I would have doubled up, but I didn't. They were all cherry picked. FFPC folks, people are not, slow. There's some sharp dogs out there, and it's always competitive. So I do enjoy fighting in those leagues, and so that was the reason I picked Lloyd. I guess is he my fourth? But see, I had CMC. Having CMC allowed me to start gambling a little early. So
Yeah,
that's why I'm not sure I would have started gambling that early. I'm not sure I would have done quarterback to quarterback, but having CMC, I think, put me in a position probably feeling a little too good. So I'm probably gonna get burned, but Cooks was the solid play. Lloyd was strictly a gamble at that point.
Lloyd's a great gamble because if anything happens to Jacobs, we already know AJ Dillon can't carry the load. So why not take a chance on a rookie? I love that pick. I love that pick because Marshawn Lloyd's got nothing but upside potential, and he's going to get usage because we've seen Green Bay like to
Yes.
split their volume at running back. So all he's got to do is beat out AJ Dillon, who's been disappointing the last 2 years. And you have a guy that I've got rated as the 48th best wide receiver using my metrics, and you got him 10 picks later at wide receiver. I know you were hoping that
For
Mike Williams
Williams.
or Shaheed might
Shahid's
make it
another
back
one.
to you.
Uh, it that everybody started running on them right there. The WRs.
Oh, yeah. 6 in a row
Yep.
went in the 12th round, including Jacoby Myers, who was another outstanding pick
Yep.
that late.
I would have doubled up on Lockett, probably Shaheed, for sure Myers, for sure Williams with Cooks.
No,
I would have done a doublet and started my RB fishing in round 14. And
and that's
yeah, so what I'm gonna do, Dennis, and why don't you uh I want to hear what you're doing. But anyway, uh so where you think you're going in your next pick?
my next pick. I'm probably going to dabble into the tight end market,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm probably going to dabble into another wide receiver. I feel really good about my running backs at this point. I've got 5 guys that I'm convinced will be their team's starting running back when it matters.
Yep.
And I got 3 guys that'll be starting right from the beginning of the season. At wide receiver, I've got some guys that might have some hit or miss weeks after AJ Brown. So I like, and then Mike Williams with injury concerns. So I will probably go wide receiver and tight end will be my main emphasis at this point. I was actually hoping that one more quarterback was going to drop, but he was taken in the 12th round. Bryce Young
Mm-hmm.
is a guy who had a disappointing season last year, but I'll be a buyer at round 12 or 13 with Bryce Young this year because he's going to be the starting quarterback all season long unless he gets hurt. And he's got some running upside. He's a guy that's got to perform better this year. And I like that pick that late, but I was hoping I might get him one round later. Now with Mahomes and Burrow, I'm not too worried.
No.
I'm feeling pretty confident.
But you need a 3 just in case an injury bug hits.
The 3 could be the backup to Burrow or Mahomes.
It could be.
And
you could go 4 and take Minshew and Connell way late.
I could do that, or I could take the backup to both Burrow and Mahomes to make sure I've got a quarterback every single week.
Yes.
And 2 quarterbacks all but 2 weeks. So those are the processes that I go through. After I get done with my pick, I start thinking, okay, it's too early to be concerned with players at that point.
Yes.
I don't worry about populating my queue until I'm 6 players away.
Yes.
Now it's a slam dunk. If whatever.
And this is a slow league, by the way, folks.
Yeah,
if we had
slow
6
draft.
hours, 6 hours.
Slow draft. So Mike Williams was actually on my queue as early as round 10.
Every time I hear the word Mike Williams in this league, it's like you're cussing me, Dennis. Quit it.
So when I got to the 12th round, or got to the 11th round, I was 6 picks away. I added Rashee Rice, Chase Brown, and Rashid Shaheed to my queue.
Yeah.
I always try to add at least 4 or 5 guys. Mike Williams is still there. Mike Williams was a carryover for 2 rounds. I started thinking about taking him in the 10th. And when I got to the 12th and I'm about 6 picks away and I'm looking at my draft board there, I'm in the 11th round, I should say, and I'm 6 picks away.
Yep.
And Mike Williams is the only guy left still on my draft board. I'm like, yeah. That's who I'm taking. There's no doubt about it. The only question was, do I take him in the 11th or do I take him 12.1? I didn't want to screw his ADP up, so I took him on 12-1. A 1 pick could matter, you know.
Yeah. And just where probably I'm going to finish out with a late tight end, but probably way late, and then I'm going to just take dart shots at RBs and maybe another wide receiver or 2 in the next 5, 6, 7 rounds.
Well, it's going to be a very exciting end of this draft, and we're going to get to put a few theories together. Well, Professor, next week, we're going to be talking about some of those mid-round picks in best ball. And by then, we will have been through the 13th, 14th, and 15th round in this league.
Dennis and I we could talk hours, and I know if you've listened this long, you're tired of us running our mouth, but I think you get to see a taste of where we're coming from. I haven't heard a lot of podcasts where things like what you and I are talking are bounced around a lot. Maybe I'm wrong, and I don't listen. No offense to anybody. I don't listen because I'm too busy doing research and thinking. But I think folks got a lot of taste of kind of what we're thinking right now in early June. I keep saying that. This is early June.
In fantasy football, it is not checkers, it's chess. You have to think several moves ahead.
Yes.
If you really want to win, you have to look at your team, be able to understand on the fly. And this is why I love slow drafts.
Yep.
But understand where your strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah. Draft diary.
Look at the value of the players that are left in the draft pool when they get to you. It wouldn't matter if I needed a wide receiver or not. Mike Williams is going home with me at that point in the draft.
Dennis, quit it.
Because when you can get a guy like Mike Williams, and you're drafting Mike Williams that late in the draft, and you know there's another player who values Mike Williams,
Yep.
you know you're going to cash in.
Yeah, you are. You cash me in, all right.
So head on over to the science of fantasyfootball.com. Check out the lesson plans from the professor, and check out the taped version of this. If you're listening to the audio version, get the tape version and get the video to go with it. And of course, more articles coming, more research coming, and come on back here next week for another edition of the science of fantasy football.
Get to work, folks.